Hello, BookTube. We're continuing with my 2023 library tour. We're finishing up this little book room. We've gone the whole circumference, and the tripod, duopod filming situation here that I've managed to cobble together is extremely tenuous. So I'm thinking that I'm going to do this last bookcase all in one video. It's mostly it's canonical classics. Again, that is the trigger warning for this video, is that this is all canonical classics. If you're not interested in those in a library tour, that's all you're going to see in this video, so you can skip it. But the main interest here is the form, the publisher, the format, rather than the individual books. So at least mostly. We'll start off with some individual books, but I think we can get through this whole bookcase in one video so that the world doesn't come crashing down. So we'll do with this is a, I've got a big sort of block bookcase that's very, very thick, very heavy, very deep. It doesn't work for books. It's way, way too deep for that, so I use it for clothes. And on top of that, to sort of fix this blind corner, I have a little bookcase. And it has classics on it. And it has a flat top, so there are books stacked there. We'll deal with those first. This is the Charles Passage edition of Horace. I had this in a trade paperback forever and ever, and really like it. I really like just the job that he does. Look at the notes that just fill some of the pages. So when I found it in hardcover, I grabbed it. Then we have this odd thing. This is Celia and Louis Zukofsky did a translation of Catullus. This is a trade paperback. I really like this volume. I kind of wish that I had this in a hardcover, but I'll take it. This is just the poems with facing pages there, but it's a nice big generous edition of Catullus. Then we have the Canterbury Tales. This is the J.U. Nicholson modernization of the Canterbury Tales, and the justification of this volume is the illustrations by Rockwell Kent. This is fully illustrated, spot illustrations and also full page illustrations by Rockwell Kent. Let me see if I can get you one of those. There we go. Very stark, very much meant to evoke, medieval engravings, that sort of thing. Then we have another edition of the Canterbury Tales. This is another modernized edition, this one by Burton Raffel, who's a translator we've seen many times on this channel. He's turned his translating hand to many things. This is a lovely modern library thing with deckled edges. I had it, I reviewed it, but I had it in a smaller, ratty trade paperback, so when I saw the hardcover again, I grabbed it. And then the last of these top books is the annotated Christmas Carol, where a lovely thing, really, where you get the text and then tons of annotation on the side. So that is the top, which is those are stacked up there, and I will stack them back up there. Then we'll do the next shelf. We're at only 3 minutes. This might work. We have only one Transwise book here, and this is the Old Loeb Horace. This is a Loeb Classical Library edition that has the Latin on one side and the English on the other. Then we have the books themselves. And the first one we have is a Modern Library Giant. We've seen a couple of those. This is the complete novels of Jane Austen, with this dorky little cover there. I had this forever in a really battered edition. I found it again with a dust jacket, and grabbed it. I found this in December of 2016. So we'd already been talking to each other, so maybe I hauled it on this channel. No real reason, I think, to drop those. I think we can just put them back on the shelf. Then we have Everyman's Library. Everyman's Library went through a period where they had a uniform design of books, and I grabbed a lot of them, and I also was sent a lot of them by you. And I've kept my favorites. This is the Mandelbaum translation of Ovid's Metamorphoses. And this is what the edition looked like, this sort of black and white spine. Then we have the Peviar and Volkonsky translation of The Idiot by Dostoevsky. We have the only complete edition, the thing that I was talking about eons ago when we were doing the Penguin Classic bookcase, of The Duke's Children by Anthony Trollope, with reviews stuck in it. This is the editors went through and rescued and reconstituted the entirety of this book that he did when it was serialized, before he was asked to cut a huge amount of it for book publication. So, of course, I have that. Then we have The Tale of Genji. This is the side and sticker translation. I have this in a 2-volume hardcover box set. I do not have the trade paperback of this, but now I have this as well. These are really solidly made books. They've got the sewn binding and the cloth bookmark. This is the J.G. Nichols translation of the Decameron. Again, with this design. These all have this design. Now, this old edition of Pride and Prejudice, I say old because Everyman's Library did this look, but they added on these lovely color photos behind the artwork of the cover. And for a long time before that, they didn't do that. It was just very stark. This is Pride and Prejudice. Same basic look on the spine, but for a long time they only did that. And then a selection by Kate Loveman of The Diary of Samuel Pepys. So one of many Pepys diaries that I have in this room. Here. Okay, then we'll move on to the next shelf. We're at 6 minutes. This should work. The next shelf and the shelf after it, and most of the shelf after that, are Norton Critical Editions, where you get the front of the text is an introduction, and then the text itself with footnotes, and then the back of the book is critical apparatus, essays about the book, new editions or old translations of whatever historical grounding the book has. Really a kind of a silent seminar on that work in one volume. They're wonderful volumes. They're very popular in schools, but I argue for them for the general reader. If there's a canonical work that you really like, or think you might really like and might want to know more about, the number one place to start is the Norton Critical Edition. Absolutely. And you can find a lot of them in used bookstores because they've been printed liberally because they've been popular in schools. And I have a whole bunch of them. I love them anyway, and then I have a lot of them because publishers, Norton, started sending them to me. For instance, here is an older, this is the second edition of the Norton Critical War and Peace. This is the George Gibrian translation of War and Peace, but there are a couple of Norton Critical editions of War and Peace. Here we have the third edition of the Norton Critical Edition of Darwin that has, that has the super gorilla on the back. This has, I don't know if this is going to tell me on the cover, but I'm sure this will have the whole of Origin of Species. Excerpts from, it has selections from Origin of Species, selections from Descent of Man, and tons of other stuff too, and huge amounts of essays, which is fantastic. Then we have Edmund Spenser's poetry, a great volume of Spenser to have, because Spenser, unlike many, many other English poets of even a certain era, really needs those critical essays in the back a lot. Then we have some Chaucer. This is the Norton Critical Edition of Troilus and Cresside. And we also have the Norton Critical Edition of the Canterbury Tales in the second edition of 15 Tales and the General Prologue, back when they looked like this. But then the newer Norton Criticals started to come out, and they look like this. We have another, this is the third edition of the Norton Critical Chaucer, which has 17 Tales and the General Prologue. so you've got, and it will also, the key difference here, the key thing to point out is that these will have different essays in the back as well. Not always better essays, in fact, usually worse. These later Nortons have to kowtow to Twitter politics, so usually the essays in the back are about the essay writer, not about the novel, the writer at all. But some of them can still be good. Then we have the Seamus Heaney translation of Beowulf in the Norton Critical Edition. This is has the book and then tons and tons of supporting material. Then we have the Norton Critical Edition of Les Morts d'Arthur. Very, very nice edition. My favorite edition of Mallory, even though I think I have a couple of editions of Mallory in this room. Then we have the Norton, this is the Susan Bernofsky translation of The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. I think this is also the translation used in the Norton Critical of The Metamorphoses. I think it is. But this is not that. This is just the translation as it was done for the market. Then we have the Norton Critical Edition of Crime and Punishment. This is the translation by Michael Katz. Fantastic cover there. And it has a blurb on the back by yours truly. A Norton Critical with a blurb by Steve. A wonderful thing, because I know that it's going into schools. I know that students, who are my foremost charge, are seeing it. And knowing that I like it, knowing that I approve of it. Same thing with this. This is the very first Norton Critical Edition of The Tale of Genji. And they used the Washburn translation, and they therefore used my blurb on the back there, which is great. To be blurbed on a Norton Critical is just about as good. The only thing better would be to be blurbed on a Penguin Classic. And then finally, the English Bible. Norton did a absolutely mind-bogglingly great two-volume King James Bible, Old Testament and the New Testament. They are pricey to get, even if you don't get them in these Norton Critical editions, even if you get them in the older ones, the brown ones, they're still pricey to get. They are worth it. If you're interested in doing an incredibly deep dive into the Bible, they're worth it. This is the New Testament and Apocrypha in this new Norton Critical version, and it's got blurbs by Jack Miles and Robert Alter, whose names we've seen on this library tour just in this room, but also by me. So I am as a lot of you put it somewhat dolefully, I am blurbed on the Bible. Then we have a trade paperback of The Essential Horace. This is also translated by Burton Raffle, and this is a trade paperback. An interesting thing with deckled edges, paperbacks don't usually have those. But I found a hardcover of this, so I now have the two of them. That was the Transwise books, and we'll move on to the next shelf here at 11 minutes. And these are all Norton Critical editions, so that'll be easy to just go through them. We have On Liberty by John Stuart Mill. We have John Donne's Poetry plus Dinosaurs. We have their great volume of Erasmus, Praise of Folly, and Other Writings. The critical selections in the back of this are really, really good. Let's see here. Okay, then we have a different Norton Critical. This may have been the first one. This is the mod translation of War and Peace. So a very different one. Actually, this is also the mod translation, yes? Yes, this is also the mod translation. Cyprian is the editor. And this has Russian on the pages there. Someone had this before me. This was not sent to me from Norton. Then we have the Norton Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. A very pretty volume. The last one that they will ever do of Huckleberry Finn. We have the Norton Critical of Frankenstein. This is, I wonder if this tells me which this is. Because you have to ask that, right? You have to ask which this is. Or maybe the Norton Critical will have excerpts from both. No, it doesn't automatically, it doesn't immediately tell you. It should immediately tell you which of the two versions that Mary Shelley wrote of this book this is, but it doesn't. I assume that it's the second version. Then we have the Norton Critical Hamlet with Jude Law on the cover, prowling around there as the Prince of Denmark. Then we have the Norton Critical The Prince. This is translated by Robert Adams. Tons of great critical stuff in the back of that. We have the Norton Critical Dracula. That I really liked this volume, although I always want to point out, these are if you're already fascinated by the book. You do not need critical annotations for Frankenstein or Dracula, or I would argue The Prince if the translator is any good, or Hamlet. You don't. The annotations are if you want to learn a lot more about the book, and you'll never get a better one-volume apparatus for that than Norton Critical. Then we have the Norton Critical edition of The Great Gatsby, which they waited a long time to get. Finally, the Gatsby became available, so they were able to do that. They were able to give you the text and tons of essays. Same thing with Mrs. Dalloway. These weren't in the public domain. They weren't available for a long, long time. Oh, then we have a great one. This is some Norton Critical are just better than others. Just that Mallory is better than this. This is Gordon Teskey's edition of Paradise Lost. This is an amazingly good Norton Critical edition. Really well done, really well balanced. Okay, then we have another one that Norton had to wait for, The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot. It finally got the right to do that. Yeah, let's put you up there where you belong. Then a Transwise book here. We're at what? 15 minutes? Oh yeah, we're going to be able to do this easily. Great. Fantastic. Okay. We have, this came in here. This is from Princeton. This is How to Be Content. Horace, selections from Horace that I brought in here because this room is where Horace belongs anyway. And let's move on to this bottom shelf here and keep going. We have the Marie Boroff translation of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. We have another edition of Hamlet, this one with Benedict Cumberbatch on the cover. Hamlet just keeps coming out, and you can see right away there the emphasis here on schools. You're only ever going to get, what's a good example? You're only ever going to get that one edition of Darwin. But you'll get a new edition of Hamlet pretty regularly because schools will get the latest one. We have a Norton Critical Edition of the Oresteia. This is translated by Oliver Kaplan. A terrific contemporary cover there. A lot of these modern ones, these black spine ones, were sent to me by Norton. We have the third edition of Machiavelli's The Prince, the Wayne Rebhorn translation. And then one more Norton Critical. That was a lot. We have Oedipus the King by Sophocles. And this is translated by Emily Wilson with the play and then tons of essays in the back. And then we have another of these Penguin Emily Bickford design naked hardcover classics. This is the Canterbury Tales. I'm sure that this is Neville Coghill. Yes, this is the Neville Coghill modern English version of Chaucer. Again, I think these things are lovely, but even pulling it on and off the shelf, rubbing the books on either side has dimmed these just a little. These will rub right off. That's not a concern for most people, but I am fairly rough on my books, so it's a concern for me. Then we have, who did this? This is the folio press of the Aspirin Papers by Henry James with illustrations. Here, let me see if I can find one. Since we've got the time, this was much better behaved than I thought. Yeah, there we go. I think the Aspirin Papers is really good, very comparatively controlled. I like it very much. Then we have the hardcover of the Dennis Washburn translation of The Tale of Genji. Tons of stuff stuck in it. We saw the trade paperback, but this and we also saw the Norton Critical Edition, which has my name printed on it. This was the first thing I got. Actually, the second thing, because I got the big fat galley copy from the publisher, and I did not keep it. I wish that I had, but I didn't. Then we have, this is the Peter Green translation of the Argonautica, which we've already seen. We've seen this a couple of times on this channel, in this room. This is Apollonius of Rhodes. This is his story of Jason and the Golden Fleece, Jason and Medea and the Voyage of the Argo. Then we have, oh, this is wonderful. This is translated by Alan James. This is his translation of the Post-Homerica, the Trojan epic, Quintus of Smyrna, writing what Homer left out, writing the rest of the Trojan War story. We've seen this a couple of times on this channel as well, in this room. This is a tremendous modern version with absolutely buried in notes, which the Way translation for the Loeb Classical Library does not give you. Then we have, this is the Bibliophile Society. This is the, no sense showing you the spine, since there's not much to it. Let's find the first page here. Oh goodness, this is well over 100 years old. I don't know if you're going to make it easy. Well, this is the Odes and Epodes of Horace from the Bibliophile Society. So an older book. I had to cut the pages. I've been very careful about it. It has a very long introduction that has the kind of offhand erudition and scholarship that you get 100 years ago that you don't get anymore. And then finally, a book that we've already seen here in this room, another double. This is a hardcover of Robert Fitzgerald's translation of the Aeneid, with the decolleges and the stately cover there and whatnot. Really nice offset red typing there for the drop letters and the indicia up at top, and that is it. Aside from one Transwise book at the bottom here that I need to find room for in this room, and we've seen enough doubles so that I'm certainly going to be able to find room for it, and that's this. That's the running press edition of Jack London. This is not complete at all. It says that it's the unabridged Jack London, but it's not. But it's a lot of Jack London, and I want to revisit this. This will be the London volume that I want. So it needs a room in here. I just need to make room for it. That's all. Shouldn't be too hard to do. There's lots and lots of stuff that can be fixed. Because that's what I'm going to do with this little book room now that with this library tour has finished. This is the last part of it. We've gone all the way around the little book room. And it's a mess. It's been changing as I go along. I've been adding books and subtracting books as I go along, completely invalidating all of the videos that I've been making. And I'm going to double and triple down on that process now that I've actually, this is done, that we've done the completion, so that I'm not leaving anything unfinished. So library tours are going to stop for a while I assess this room. Pull out all the stuff, recontextualize everything. I want to free up one whole bookcase. And and move things in here, reconsolidate everything in here, maybe free up more than one bookcase. And I can't do that while I'm making library tours. So we're gonna pause the 2023 library tour now at the end of this weekend, and then I'll resume it when this room is under control. So I will get to that. It will not be an eternal project. We will resume this soon. But in the meantime, I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.